Yo, what's up, guys? Teacher Paul here, and today we have a coffee request. This comes from Bertil, and Bertil is sharing this very interesting Sabaton story about the song Smoking Snakes. So, I am familiar with this story. This is Brazilian history. So, this was the Brazilian Expeditionary, I don't know how to say that word, Expeditionary Force, and Sabaton history. Is the video here. So if you want to watch that video without my reaction, link is in the description. And also, guys, it is pretty cool that Sabaton always tells history of other countries. So it's nice that they dug into this history for like the Brazilian smoking snakes. So let's check this out and let's get to it.
I'm Indy Nidell.
And I'm Pat from Sabaton, and this is Sabaton History.
I love how they teach history with their music.
You might not think of Brazil when you think of World War II, but the Brazilian Expeditionary Force fought well in Italy, producing three extraordinary heroes.
Wait, you guys don't think of Brazil in World War II? We were there. We sent troops out. It has a sad history, but we were there.
The song The Smoking Snakes is about the memory of those people. And we actually went down to Juez de Fora in Brazil and met the people who served with them.
Now, Per is going to tell you a bit about the song, but I'm going to tell you about the Brazilian Expeditionary Force.
Expeditionary, that's how you say the word. Expeditionary.
When you think of the major combatants of the Second World War, Brazil is usually not the first nation that springs to mind. And indeed, if it had been up to the Brazilian government, they would have preferred to stay out of the conflict.
Yeah, Brazilians don't like war.
In the 1920s, Brazil was haunted by internal conflicts, both politically and socially. Radicals on the left and on the right fought for control of the state, and a series of coups and insurrections destabilized the country. The rise of Getulio Vargas in the wake of the Brazilian Revolution of 1930 meant that, on the one hand, Brazil began an era of industrialization and social reforms, while on the other hand, the country slowly shifted into authoritarian dictatorship. By 1937, Vargas was basically ruling the country by martial law. But although he had been inspired by and copied from the European fascists on his rise to power, he did not officially align himself with them. One major reason he did not was the growing influence of the United States. The U.S. felt that...
See, the thing about Brazil and the United States is that it's kind of like a brotherly... how should I put this? It's love-hate, right? Until today, like Brazil and the United States have good relations, but at the same time, it feels like the Amazon has a lot to do with it. Everybody wants a piece of the Amazon, but it is interesting how much influence the United States has over Brazil. Brazil feels like it's a second United States. If you ever live there, you will kind of feel like, Brazil is very similar to the United States in terms of trends, in terms of influences. It just feels like it's following the same footsteps. But okay, let's see.
Brazil, most of Central and South America, was part of its sphere of economic influence and watched carefully for any signs of foreign influence. And indeed, there was a growing German influence in South America, especially in Argentina, Brazil's major enemy and rival. Though both countries had significant German and Japanese minorities who influenced public opinion. When the U.S. joined the war...
In fact, so much so that in the southeast of Brazil and the south, like the whole south of Brazil is full of Germans. Like literally, we see a lot of German communities and a lot of people who are German descendants. In fact, some of my friends from the south are German descendants. And not only that, in my city, we have a Japanese community, one of the biggest also, which is very interesting. In fact, I think I have shown this in the past, but there are cities in Brazil that are 100% European, like literally. Of course, it was colonized by Portugal and stuff like that, but there are parts of Brazil that make you think you are in Germany. It's very fascinating.
Japanese minorities who influence public opinion. When the U.S. joined the war after Pearl Harbor in December 1941, American politicians acted quickly.
Big
Already in
mistake,
January
Pearl Harbor.
1942, they met with leading figures from all over South America and made an alliance with most of the nations, except Argentina and Chile. Brazilian politicians would still have gladly traded with the Axis powers, especially after Germany promised favorable arms deals for raw materials. But the U.S. made it perfectly clear that this was not cool with them, and consequences would follow. So Brazil joined their South American alliance.
Wow.
The Axis powers were well aware of the importance of raw materials from South America to the Allied war effort. So German and Italian submarines began targeting cargo vessels from Brazil en route to the U.S. In August 1942 alone, German submarine U-507 torpedoed and sank 5 Brazilian ships, and hundreds of dead Brazilian sailors caused a huge public outcry. Although the isolationistic Vargas government did not want to be involved in the war, public opinion forced his hand, and Brazil declared war on Germany August 22, 1942. This meant mobilizing the Army and the Navy, though both were in a rather poor state. Brazil did not have a large army anyhow, nor the equipment to outfit one. In fact, they were equipped with an amalgamation of European weapons, so they turned to the U.S. for help. The U.S. was actually not all that keen on helping out, since American industry had its hands full with equipping their own units, but they couldn't turn down the Brazilians without insulting them. So they
Dude, why? Why? Like, oh man, it feels like nothing has changed.
offered to supply them with uniforms and rifles and some older artillery pieces, but everything else would have to wait. Brazil began training a division of 3 regiments with service and support companies attached to it. The Brazilian Expeditionary Force, or FEB, 25,000 men strong. Soon, American outfitted from head to toe, helmet, field jacket, boots, and knife. They still had to train with old Springfield rifles instead of the standard M1s. By July 1943, they were ready. But the tanks, half-tracks, and jeeps that had been promised had still not arrived, as they were not prioritized by American quartermasters. But where would the FEB be deployed? Guard duty on the Portuguese islands of the Atlantic was suggested. Then there was talk they would ship out to North Africa, but nothing happened for a whole year as the Brazilians waited and trained. By mid-1944, the war in the Mediterranean had progressed from North Africa to Sicily and then bogged down in Italy. With the Americans now engaged in northern France, they could use all the help they could get in Italy, where there was already a multinational force fighting at Monte Cassino. So in July 19...
Thank you so much, Nami, for the 2 coffees. Thank you for the support. Let me also mention that Brazil has a huge, not only Brazil, but Argentina as well, a huge Italian community, like a lot of Italians living in Brazil, and a lot of descendants as well. In fact, recently there has been a lot of controversy with the Italian government trying to block the citizenship of Brazilians and Argentinians, and limit it only to grandparents. So anyone who has any great-grandparents cannot or will not be able to, get citizenship through the Iuri Sanguini, which is the bloodline, which is horrible. It really sucks. But, it is what it is. I was going to say that Brazil has good ties with Italy. In fact, when you travel abroad, Brazilians, you can go on the government website, and you can get something which will allow you to access the medical services. I was going to say NHS, but that is like the UK, right? But you can access the medical services in both Portugal and Italy, which is like a treaty that Brazil has with both of these countries. But it feels like they're not as friendly as they could be. And it's strange because, Brazil helped them during the war as well, which this is a part that we're going to go into, I guess.
Multinational force fighting at Monte Cassino. So in July 1944,
Just feels like
the
people
1st
are
Brazilian
ungrateful.
regiment reached Italy. But the Americans there, at first, did not really know what to do with them and didn't even have enough barrack space for them. By now, there was a whole lot of discontent with the whole waiting around to do what they trained for shtick. The Brazilian soldiers were eager, but had been held back for so long that by then they had the saying, mais fácil a uma cobra cachimbo fumar do que a FEB embarzar. It is more likely for a snake to smoke a pipe than for the FEB to go into combat.
Okay, let me try to read what he said. É mais fácil uma cobra fumar do que a FEB ir para a guerra. Yeah, that's literally how you read it. But it's what he said. And it's funny because that is an expression in Portuguese where you say, for example, nem que a vaca tussa, for example, is like the opposite of é mais fácil do que uma cobra fumar. Like, so that's why they're called like the smoking snakes, because it's something that is an expression that it's very unlikely. It's very hard for it to happen.
For a snake to smoke a pipe than for the FEB to go into combat.
And that's why they
Sorta
were
like
called
when pigs fly.
snakes.
The smoking
When
snake
pigs fly,
became
kind
so
of.
popular that they made
It's their
patches of
emblem.
it for their uniforms.
Emblem.
However, by September 1944, they approached the front lines in Tuscany
They're
at the
well known in
Arno
Brazil.
River. Here, they had their baptism by fire. Most of the Brazilian troops were dangerously green in spite of the extensive training because only a few older officers had actual combat experience from the Brazilian Revolution. But they fought skirmishes against German and Italian units until the winter came. Allied High Command was determined to make a northern Italian push in spring 1945 with the aim of capturing Bologna. For that, they would have to first secure the high ground in northern Tuscany. So in the winter of 44-45, the Brazilians were sent out to fight in the mountains in temperatures down to minus 20 degrees and
Wow.
often against veteran German Gebirgsjäger. Most of the
We don't
Brazilians
have those
had never seen
temperatures.
snow before.
Exactly, that's what I was
Fighting
going to
in the
say.
mountains was as tough as you might imagine. The terrain was difficult, and the Brazilians engaged German forces at Monte Castello, a well-defended artillery position. They were often sent out at night on combat patrols to infiltrate the German lines, probe their defenses, and capture prisoners. As the 1945 campaign season began, Allied High Command began Operation Encore. This was a combined American-British offensive to finally drive the German 10th and 14th armies out of Italy. The Brazilians, supporting the Americans, would send out their whole division. They were tasked with attacking Montese, a major German strongpoint in the south of the Po Valley. The attack on the city was planned for mid-April, and the Brazilians would advance on the left flank of the American thrust, this time even supported by armor.
Nice.
Prior to the attack, the Brazilians sent out patrols to reconnoiter the heights and villages around the city, or to clear minefields and update the maps. But the German infantry lay.
So, Chad is talking about why isn't Brazilian contributions in World War II recognized? And I feel like it's the same as when we saw the Polish history. A lot of ungratefulness, and it's very peculiar to see, like, why. Like, you get people's help and then you don't support them afterwards, and then like you cut ties, or it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't add up.
Around the city, or to clear minefields and update the maps. But the German infantry lay in wait. And on April 14th, right before the main attack, the Brazilian Mountain Infantry Patrol, consisting of Geraldo Baita da Cruz, Arlindo Lucio da Silva, and Geraldo Rodrigues de Souza, was ambushed by a large German force. Spotted by a German machine gun, the three men ran for cover. They were heavily outnumbered and could not be reinforced, but they did not surrender. Instead, they returned fire until their ammunition ran dry and mortar shells began falling around them. According to the legend, the Brazilians still refused to surrender and instead
Crazy.
fixed their bayonets and advanced on the Germans. The three were killed, and the Germans then buried them and planted a cross as a tribute to the heroism the Brazilians displayed. The cross bears an inscription, which I'll get to in a moment. The battle for Montese began, and the three heroes were not the only Brazilians to die that day. Montese was liberated by the Brazilians after several days of house-to-house fighting, and this battle was both the heaviest and also the final major battle the FEB fought in the Second World War. Fighting continued after the battle as the Germans retreated, but once Mussolini was killed by Italian partisans on April 28th, the unconditional surrender of the Axis forces in Italy was signed.
This is some dark history of
Now,
our world.
I spoke with a Brazilian historian about the grave and its veracity. The FEB's burial platoon did find a grave with a cross and the inscription Drai Tapfere Brasil, and the soldiers were identified by their dog tags. This is beyond doubt. For the Germans to bury them at all is very unusual. Corpses were often booby-trapped even, so you have to wonder what they did to impress the Germans. The bayonet charge and facing German fire is likely, though not definitely, an invention. The grave also bears the date January 24th, 1945, long before the fighting for Montese. However, the more famous version of the story is what I said from the Montese fighting, and with Drei Brasilianische Helden, 3 Brazilian heroes, on the grave. So there are 2 competing stories, and we don't know for sure what those brave men in the grave specifically did. Anyhow, the battle for Italy was over, and so was the war for the FEB. For the Brazilian national conscience, the death of the 3 heroes became synonymous with their struggle in a war far from home, in an unfamiliar land, on unfamiliar ground.
This reminds me of Australia
This fight
too.
has become legend, and we will never know what happened exactly on that day. But the story of those brave Brazilian men helps us make sense of the seemingly senseless death of endless millions on the battlefields of the world. These 3 young men died fighting selflessly against the Nazis to save countless other lives, the lives of strangers. And that is the ultimate sacrifice, lest we forget. We'd like to thank Icles Rodriguez and the channel Leitura Obriga Historia for help with the research for this. There is a link to their channel in the description.
Okay. I wonder what comes after this. I haven't seen the full video, but we are going to kind of like listen to this song.
Now, I find it very interesting that you chose to write about Brazilians during World War II, you know?
I'm inclined to watch the rest of this video and do the song separately. Do you guys want to watch the rest of the story, or do you want to listen to this song? Because I feel like this is like really nice Brazilian history. Why did Sabaton choose Brazil?
Yeah, it is an interesting thing, you know, but we get a lot of ideas from fans all across the world, and we do have a lot of Brazilian fans, so they kept giving
Brazilians
us ideas.
are awesome.
They've been writing here to us every week since we started saying Smoking Snakes.
Yeah, we can imagine that. But actually, this one was inspired by just researching. We were looking for stories about heroes, and I put in the word heroes
on the internet.
Yeah, in the search engine.
Wait, I think a lot of people talk about Japan. Like literally a lot. There's a lot of movies about what Japan did. Like literally. Which is like there's a lot which sucks. But I think there's a lot of I don't think you should be angry at that, because people know what Japan did. Like there's a lot of stuff about that
on different languages, and when I put it in German, Helden, that's when I came across Drei Brasilianische held them.
As we saw in the history.
Yeah, and it was a bit difficult to find the correct information for it because obviously we don't speak Portuguese.
But they think you speak every language.
Yeah.
You guys are gods.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
tell them that.
All right, well,
Okay.
we don't speak all the languages, but we luckily have a lot of friends around the world who help us speak these languages.
Okay.
And some years later, we are finding ourselves on a tour in Brazil.
Brazil.
In the city of Curitiba, we went actually to the Smoking Snakes Museum,
Okay.
where we met with some veterans and we were awarded with a medal for the memory of keeping
for
it alive.
commemorating the...
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And later we went to a city called Juez de Fora, where obviously the three people
Juiz
that we
de
sing
Fora.
about in
Nice.
the song came from.
Yeah.
And as we were standing...
But that's pretty cool. I missed the photo there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And later we went to a city called Juez de Fora, where obviously the
Sorry. Where's the photo? Some veterans. That's so nice.
met with some veterans and we were awarded with a medal for the memory of keeping
for
it alive.
commemorating
That is
the-
so
okay,
cool.
And later we went to a city called Juez de Fora, where obviously the three people that we sing about in the song came from.
Yeah.
And as we were standing backstage before the show was about to begin, the promoter of the concert came and said, "We have a special guest here tonight who would like to meet with you." And in came an older man. Well, we understood he was a veteran. And he explained in Portuguese, though, that he was serving together with the guys that we were singing about.
Oh, so he was fighting in Italy with them.
Yes. The man was making a lot of funny jokes,
Yeah?
including one where he was poking at our singer and he was poking him with the metal armor that he's wearing.
Sure. Okay.
And he was like, "That's not bulletproof, so you can't survive in war." And then he was looking at
Depends
our
on what-
drummer, who's a
what
very tall
era.
guy, and said, "You can't survive a war either because you're simply too tall that the enemy will shoot you instantly."
The snipers and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Then we took a couple of pictures with this man. And after that, we say, "Thank you for showing up and have a safe trip home because we're going to go onto the stage and perform the show now."
Right.
And he was like, "Yeah, I'm staying for the show." Oh, okay. And we thought, oh, it's going pretty wild out there. It's a heavy metal crowd out there, and they are Brazilians, so they are a very tough crowd. But
Yeah,
the man
Brazilians
said,
are
But
really
I did survive the war, didn't I?
passionate-
I think
passionate
I'm gonna
crowds.
survive a heavy metal show.
Survive a Sabaton. Now, there's one thing that you told me, which I think is really interesting. Since your song is a tribute to these men, but there's also tributes to your song.
Yeah, well, a lot of them actually.
There's a
If you
tribute to
think
the
about it
song?
that way, you refer to the orchestral versions of it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because the song "Smoking Snakes" is obviously about the Brazilian army, and there's a lot of Brazilian army orchestras who cover this one, and I think they actually made it to one of their marching songs now.
Wait, can we hear and see some of those right now?
Oh wow, nice. Oh, this is so nice.
Well, that's really cool that,
Well,
that
you guys know-
get honored.
You guys know I love these things, right? I love this because this is like the marching band. I've reacted to a lot of different places with the marching band. It's pretty awesome.
Well, that's really cool that you guys get honored in return.
Yeah. I mean, we always get blush, even if it's just one person and a different band, or in this case, whole orchestras. We appreciate when people covering our tunes.
Yeah.
That is so nice. Can you imagine?
In some of our songs, it's actually funny when we are talking about a specific country.
Yeah.
We try as well sometimes to get in something of the local language. And in the song "Smoking Snakes," we have a few words in Portuguese.
Okay.
And it is, of course, it becomes very powerful when it's in your native language. And when thousands of Brazilians sing along to Portuguese language, it sounds like this. And that was the story behind "Smoking Snakes."
But we'll see you next time on the Sabaton History Channel.
That is so awesome. See, I used to react to Sabaton a
All
lot.
right, everybody, thanks for watching. And don't forget to subscribe to the Sabaton History channel, check out Indie's other channels, and please also support us here on Patreon, because that's really what makes this thing happen.
Yeah, as I was saying, like I like Sabaton and I used to react to them a lot until, the videos started getting blocked and copyrighted. But it's really, really nice to see that they went into Brazilian history. They toured Brazil, they won a medal, and they made something good for the Brazilian fans, because Brazilian fans are very passionate and they always show up. So that's pretty cool. We're gonna go react to the song now, so come join us. If you want to request a video, go over to Buy Me a Coffee or even on Patreon, and you can also watch full movie reactions, series, shows, and other things that you might enjoy. So go support the channel and get more content. And click over here to see our other videos. See you soon. Thank you so much to Bertil. See you again. Bye. Bye-bye.